There probably aren't many shows that don't have at least one plot hole or inconsistency. While thinking about it, there are quite a few of them when it comes to Degrassi. Certain things I noticed while rewatching the show that I never really paid attention to. I'm not the first one to point these things out, but they were things that made me question the timeline of events. Since you guys know that I'm such a nerd for this show, we're going to talk about all of those lingering questions that I have. Some of these inconsistencies are going to be small and pointless to bring up, like Drake and Jimmy existing in the same universe.
You know how Drake's has started from the bottom, now we're here?
My interview with ridiculously hot rap sensation Drake.
Or Dave not being able to sing in season 10, and then being the lead of a school musical in season 12.
You were always moon in the night.
He must have had some serious vocal coaching, but it's definitely going to be fun to look back at all of these things that might not add up, or inconsistencies that just some have never noticed before. Let's start off with something that's more well known, Shantae's age. This one I've seen brought up a lot, and it's going to lead into another topic that I'll be talking about shortly, but since Shantae started back in season 4, being in the 8th grade I guess, even though she definitely seems older, she doesn't graduate from the show until the 11th season, which is kind of crazy that a character that has been on the show for so long and they do so little with her character. I've already talked about my suspicions as to why that is. I think Shantae could have been an interesting character if the show even cared to give her interesting plot lines, but they never really did that. They gave her plot lines when they needed to pair her up with the other black character on the show. She was always meant to be a filler character, which is why they didn't mind keeping her for so long. We already know that Degrassi has retconned a few school years, particularly the 2008 through 2009 school year and 2009 through 2010 school year, meaning that if we're taking all of that into account, Shantae would be actually a 6th grader when she started the show, which clearly doesn't add up. They finally decided to make her a part of Holly J's graduating class. I also wonder, since they never said otherwise, if Danny and Shantae were still dating during her senior year, and if she would be going off to college to be closer to him. Where would a list like this be without acknowledging the inconsistent school years in this show? This has always been a fascination for me, especially when it comes to Degrassi. Since it was a show that focused on students growing up and aging, it gets a little bit more noticeable, especially when the characters start off as actual teenagers and not adults. For example, Claire, Allie, Connor, and Casey start off as freshmen in the 2007 through 2008 school year when they are 14, and their time on the show doesn't end until 2015, minus Casey, who left in season 12. That's nearly 8 years, and that takes place over the course of 4 school years. For characters like Manny, Emma, and Toby, who started off in the 7th grade, it made sense for them to be at Degrassi for 6 years or so, and it wasn't noticed as much. But since Claire, Allie, and Connor started off as freshmen, it's definitely felt after a while. To keep the school years going on longer, the pacing slows down considerably, where it started off each season being a singular school year with about 20 episodes per season. It felt like time naturally progressed. Season 10 starts off a new school year, and it doesn't even conclude that school year until about 2/3 through season 11. That's at least 70 episodes in one school year, which is the longest I think they've ever stretched a single school year up until that point. The rest of season 11, which is about 15 episodes, starts another school year, and this goes through season 12 for the rest of the school year. It's interesting since the show has never started a school year in the middle of a season, which I also think really messed up the flow of it. Season 13, which had 40 episodes, starts off during the summer for 8 episodes and then starts a new school year 9 episodes in, and season 14 had 28 episodes. That means the total amount of episodes in one school year is nearly as many as the episodes in the 2010 through 2011 school year. I understand since having so many characters why the show would add more episodes. However, it is felt with how slowly each year goes by, and since there are more episodes to air, this would also slow things down to the point where the show's timeline couldn't match with the current year anymore. After seasons 8 and 9, which took place during the 2007 through 2008 school year, season 10 skips us ahead 2 entire school years to 2010 through 2011. After season 5, the show started having 2 seasons take place over a school year. Things were fine enough since season 6, 7, 8, and 9 were still about 20 episodes each, so the total amount of episodes for one school year would be about 40 episodes, which is different from how they paced a school year before, but not that drastically different. Another school year ended up getting retconned, going from the 2011 school year to the 2013 school year, If we're looking at things realistically, seasons 10 through 14 should take place from 2007 to 2011. Once the next class airs, since it's much shorter, things seem to be back on track. Since only one season of that show is 10 episodes, they go back to the 20 episodes per school year format. But I always found this so interesting, since it's never acknowledged at all. I know I've already mentioned this before, but why was there never an explanation for where Charlie went? Even a passing line would have been fine, saying things didn't work out. I always wondered what went through the writers' minds when they wrote her out. Did they plan on bringing her back? Did they realize it was weird to have Charlie and Fiona in a relationship? It might be that they just wanted to go in a different direction, but it's interesting how the show acts as if she never existed. Was there ever a reason that Liberty never went to Banting? I don't think they ever gave us an explanation as to why she didn't attend.
Yeah, well, once I'm at Banting, I'll be a very distant one. Yeah, I've been accepted, and if scholarships weren't...
It seemed like a school that she really wanted to go to, but in season 8 she's going to Smithdale with Manny and Emma as if she never applied. She made such a definitive statement about it, especially right before graduation, so I imagine it would have been hard for her to just switch up schools like that. Maybe the plan initially was to focus on Liberty at Banting like Paige, but they decided it would be easier to just have them all go to the same school. It doesn't really matter since Liberty only gets one plotline in season 8. The show was really trying to hold on to older characters at the time, just like with Marco, Ellie, and Paige, but the college days didn't seem to work out since more focus is on the students at Degrassi. By season 9, Liberty isn't even credited as a main character anymore, like she probably shouldn't have for season 8. The next one wasn't one I thought about until my latest rewatch, maybe because I never really paid attention to the details of it, but my first question was, how come we never saw Spinner's father? And then my next question was, when did Spinner's father die? It's revealed in season 7 that his father died from cancer, but they never focused on Spinner coping with this, which honestly would have been so interesting now that I'm thinking about it. The major reason why I can assume it was never mentioned by the characters is because they just established it for the cancer storyline. We know that Spinner's father has been mentioned a few times on the show before. For example, here in season 3, we know that his father was still alive at that point.
Okay, I was playing Monopoly last night. She needed Atlantic, which my dad had, and he...
I guess I never really questioned this since I assumed it was early on that he died, but that doesn't seem to be the case. I've seen some other people try to fill in the gaps, and I've been interested in this timeline of events after noticing his father died later than I thought he did, as well as the fact that Kendra disappears from the show. It made me more curious when his father died. Some might suspect if not season 3, then it could have been season 4, seeing as Spinner started acting out way more. He gets expelled, all of his friends cut him off, so the most reasonable time to assume his father died would be at the end of season 4 into season 5. And the reason why I'm saying at the end of season 4 and not maybe in the beginning is only because of this throwaway line.
Just go to your locker, pack your things, and I'll notify your parents.
Season 5 would probably be the most realistic, and it would have to be early on in season 5, since season 6 starts a new school year, and Spinner doesn't really show any signs of grieving his father. He and Jimmy are also in speaking terms again, and everything seems to be fine for him overall. Nothing to suggest that he's been dealing with the recent death of his father, since season 6 and 7 take place in the same school year, and season 7 is when Spinner gets his diagnosis. I guess it's possible that his father could have died soon before his cancer diagnosis, but the way it's brought up doesn't really seem like it was that recent. Wouldn't they have said something along the lines of his father dying recently this year from cancer or something to that degree? I always got the impression when Spinner brings up his father's death, it wasn't something that recent to his cancer diagnosis. It just seems like it was something he was dealing with for a while. We never even saw his father throughout the show, so we don't really know what his relationship was like with him. It feels like such a huge revelation telling us that he died sometime off screen, and we never really see Spinner fazed by this specifically. It just feels like a really huge missed opportunity to focus on. I know that the writers probably forgot that they established Spinner's father being alive up until a certain point, but it seems like such a huge event in a character's story not to really ever bring up. Once the show revealed that Spinner's father died, we do get a few mentions of it here and there. If Spinner were more of a minor character, it really wouldn't matter to me that much, but because he's one of the more recognizable characters from the show, a character that's been on since season 1, it was obviously a fumble on the writer's part, but it is fun to fill in the gaps. Another thing I wanted to touch on was Jane's interest in football. In season 8, we saw her join the Degrassi team. She had a hard time since most of the guys didn't want her on the team. However, seeing her push through adversity to play with the guys just because she wanted to play really felt like an interesting addition to her character that showed us a different side to her. Seeing how much she fought to be on the team, I really wish they kept up with this consistently consistent interest for Jane on the show. I honestly thought it made her stand out, which is why I still think season 8 was Jane's best season as far as character exploration. By season 9, she didn't really seem interested in football as much, and to me it made her a little less interesting. Derek was never a major character, however, I always wondered why the show decided to just have him disappear the way he did. He turned into a major villain by his end on the show, and it's interesting because we do see kind of hints of this, but I don't know if the character was ever intended to turn out this way. He started off being a little jerk, but he was also someone that was kind. I also hate that he and Danny seemed to become distant over time. I know that their friendship was pretty much severed by the time Derek is last seen on the show. However, I do wonder, if given more focus on his character, how would Danny have responded to Derek becoming so much of a bully to the point of joking about hanging someone? It's really unfortunate that a fun friendship turned out this way, and it's almost kind of tragic. I know it happens all the time, but there's something about seeing the relationship really become like this. It's kind of sad. Since Derek was never meant to have major focus, I don't think they were planning out his character to become like this, it just kind of happened, since his character was already established within the show. But since I'm already on the subject of Derek, a plotline I always wondered about and found interesting was the plotline with him and Mr. Perino. Although it's implied that Perino faced some punishment, like sensitivity training, we know that he continues to teach at Degrassi later on. I mean, he couldn't have learned much if he's still making statements like this to one of his students.
We just started a discussion on immigration. How long have you lived here?
My whole life.
I'm sorry, I thought...
That brown people can't be from here, or just Muslims?
I wonder if the writers had a plan to write him off the show, or if they always planned for him to just return as a teacher. I know this happens all the time, but it's just interesting seeing a teacher in this position, and what would happen when they returned to school. It would have also been interesting if they maybe followed up on this plotline with Derek seeing Perino coming back, and maybe how he would handle that. Remember this comment Liberty makes in the next class?
We had to protest to get wheelchair ramps for Jimmy, if you can believe it.
This has always lingered in the back of my mind, because I always thought, why wouldn't Degrassi have ramps accessible to students in 2005? We saw that they had ramps accessible for students in the 80s. Knowing Jimmy got shot at the school and lost his ability to walk, I doubt the school would make things difficult to put ramps up. Do they want another liability on their hands? I know that they wanted a story that was similar to Lola because she was fighting for Tiny, who got expelled, but this statement just made no sense to me no matter how I look at it.
It doesn't make you good at guitar.
Zig knowing how to play the guitar and then not knowing how to play the guitar is another inconsistency that I've brought up and explained my frustrations with. Obviously, the writers wanted some tension with Zig and Maya. Bringing Jonah into the band would do exactly that, so the writers had to basically backtrack on the fact that Maya and Zig were in a band together. Again, if they wanted to do something like Maya wants her own space and doesn't really want to be in a band with Zig, they could have just did something like that, because then they wouldn't have had to take Zig's ability to play guitar away. However, this comment in isolation just makes no sense to me when we've seen Zig literally play a guitar. I know it's totally not important, but I always wondered if Jimmy's mother ever found out about his father's affair. In season 7, we found out that Jimmy's father was cheating on his mother, and Jimmy uses this as leverage to get his father to relinquish his trust fund so he can get stem cell surgery. The episode literally ends like this.
Any other secrets you guys have to tell me about?
Nope. That's it.
And as a teen, when I watched this, I thought it was so dramatic. The fact that Jimmy and his father decide to keep this from her and we never come back to it either. It could be a situation where his mother might already know that he's having an affair and chooses to ignore it, but we never get anything to indicate that this is the case. On one hand, I'm like, should Jimmy have the responsibility of telling his mother this secret, knowing that it would devastate her, and also knowing at the end of the day his father should be the one telling her? But at the same time, I feel like I wouldn't even be able to look my mother in the eye, knowing this fact. It's a tough situation. Either the mother never found out, or she did and they dealt with it or got divorced. Another question I had, especially after the next class, was when exactly did Lola's mother take off? We know that it would have had to have been after season 14, episode 16.
My mom finally got me a math tutor.
And before the next class, season 2, episode 4.
Ever since my mom took off, mom's gonzo.
Which would be about a year after that. When I watched the next class, I never even noticed that Lola's mother was even mentioned in season 14. seemingly still involved in Lola's life. I assume that her mother left when she was younger. Before it was revealed that her mother left, she seems to be doing fine even though her mother would have left fairly recently. And I always wanted to know more about this and how Lola was emotionally affected by her mother leaving. There's nothing really inconsistent about this, but after noticing this, it makes me wonder more about what could have happened within that year that led to Lola's mother leaving. Of course, the explanation is simple. The writers just forgot that Lola made a comment about her mother in season 14 and wanted to add some depth to her character, since she would be more of a main character in the next class. I know that Shane was reintroduced to the show so Emma could meet her biological father and find some closure with that part of her life. However, I always wondered why we never got an update or even heard Emma, maybe through a passing line, bring up Shane. Maybe that she's still visiting him or keeping in touch. JT's home life has always been inconsistent to me. For one thing, we learn from his grandmother after he gets Liberty pregnant that his father and mother both left at some point, leaving her to take care of him.
I mean, you raised Mom and me.
The way your father figured it out by leaving you and your mother when the going got rough.
Not like him.
We know that his mother was involved in his life, at least in season 1 and 2.
My mom went on one of her cleaning binges.
We also find out that his mother was a seamstress.
My mom's a seamstress. I guess I just grew up doing it.
I always thought that JT's father left when he was really young, but that might not have been the case. We know that Toby is somewhat familiar with JT's parents, since he says this in season 1, episode 5.
Your parents aren't homicidal maniacs. Maybe Mr. Armstrong will tell your parents with a D on your last math test.
Meaning that he's met both of his parents, or at least knows enough about JT's parents to bring them up, including his father. It's possible that JT's father had left by this point, but Toby says this as if his parents are still both involved. Seeing JT cope with his father leaving, man, that would have been an interesting storyline, especially if his father left around the time he was in middle school. We know that Degrassi brings up siblings for characters all the time, even if we've never seen them. Take Heather Sinclair, for instance. Hell, even Marisol apparently has a brother.
Marisol brought her brother's old football playbook for me.
We already know about Kendra and her disappearance. I think in her case it's particularly interesting because it's not just like she was mentioned and we never saw her. We've seen her a few times and she even dated Toby. So it's definitely noticed when Kendra wasn't present for specific events pertaining to Spinner. The writers also seem to have trouble staying consistent when it comes to siblings. There's a few times this happens, like JT having a sister.
And that boy band compilation CD you own, that's my sister's CD.
Paige possibly having more than one older brother.
My oldest brother's gay.
Usually when someone says my oldest brother or sister, doesn't it imply that they have more than one brother or sister? Maybe I'm reaching on this one, but when I heard that I was like, does Paige have other siblings that we never heard about? Apparently Manny has a brother also that we never see.
I knew it would work. Always says I'm my brother.
And it's implied that they're close in age, so I wonder if the writers thought it would be more interesting if Manny was an only child. I know I've already brought up the Asher plotline before, but am I the only one that really has a lot of lingering questions about what happened? Did everything fall through when pressing charges? Did Asher get away with it? Is Claire still affected by what she went through? In season 13, we see that Claire interviews for another internship, and I wonder if there was any hesitation or fear about that. I know a lot of people say that the Asher plot was concluded, but to me it feels as if they're setting something up. Maybe they wanted to leave it open for interpretation as far as what happens. Realistically, Claire might not have been able to get justice for what happened, but I wish the show acknowledged it a little bit more, since it was a pretty traumatizing experience for her.
This is my godson Connor, and he's going to be boarding with me this year so he can attend the gifted program.
I know that this subject has been brought up a lot by die-hard Degrassi fans, but I'm going to talk about it anyway. How come we never learned anything about Connor's parents or his previous home life before he lived with Simpson? I always thought it was interesting to introduce a character this way, since it really hadn't been done before. Connor wasn't related to Simpson by blood, but by a close relationship that Simpson and Christine must have had to his parents. Unlike other characters on this list, where we might get information through a passing line, Connor doesn't really get that at all. We barely get focus on Connor outside of his Asperger's, and even that doesn't really feel as focused on as I would have liked. I know many have come up with this theory that Lucy is Connor's mother, since Lucy was close enough to Christine and Simpson. It's an interesting idea, however, if this were the case, then she would have had to have Connor already before the next generation even started. and it's never said or implied that she had kids, so I'm not sure if this could be the case. It makes me want to speculate more. I wonder if the writers ever had a plan for Connor's parents. They probably wanted someone close to Simpson, so they wouldn't have to write in another parent for Connor. I just have so many questions as to who exactly his parents are, and how he came to live with Simpson.
Gracie and Drew were the best of friends from the day they met.
That was taken just after our wedding.
I always found it interesting that Drew and Adam were step-siblings that grew up together. Narratively, it never plays a role like it does with Jake and Claire, for instance, or Toby and Ashley, whose parents' marriage seemed to be somewhat recent, and Toby didn't look at Ashley as his sister immediately.
She's not my stepsister. We just happen to be stuck in a forced living arrangement.
We also see Toby's mother and Ashley's father and what the relationships are like with their parents. There was a point to making them step-siblings, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And don't get me wrong, there doesn't necessarily have to be a point to it, but it is a family dynamic that would have been interesting to explore. However, with Drew and Adam, it's never brought up what happened with their parents. We mostly saw Audra as the representation for Drew and Adam's parents, occasionally seeing their father. It isn't uncommon that Degrassi would do this if a character had two parents. For instance, Eli's mom disappears and we see more of his father as the parent rep. Same thing with Maya and Katie's father. I mean, the next class just gets rid of him entirely, but whatever. We literally never see Drew interact with his own father, only in like a group setting. Most of his emotional conflict is with Audra. I just find it interesting that Drew's mother and Adam's father are never brought up. Maybe they both died, but even still, it just seems weird that it's just never explored or even really mentioned. The reason that Drew and Adam might be step-siblings might be just because the actors don't look enough alike to be biological siblings. Maybe that theory is way out there, but ever since they established that they were step-siblings, I always wondered who their parents were. And I always thought that Audra was Drew's biological mother. Am I the only one that got that? Since Fiona stayed on the show for so long, I always wondered what happened to Declan and why he was written off the show. It's possible that the actor had other roles that he was doing at the time, but I do find it interesting that Declan disappears and we never hear from him again.
Declan's on a school trip.
Declan's on his way here.
I'm not my brother. My mom took like 1,000 pictures of Declan. But when I found out I was sick, it was so hard to not call Declan. I'm not Declan's freaky sister. Declan and I weren't allowed to sing commercials.
You guys already know that I'm not the biggest fan of Declan, but I do think the character had potential to grow, especially because I think the actor plays him well. He left in a way that had me conflicted about how I felt about him as a character. It's not like he couldn't have had more depth, because I could totally see it, but his character just never comes back to Degrassi after Fiona and Declan were supposed to go to school in New York. On top of that, we barely focused on his character throughout season 10, only occasionally when he came to visit Holly J, really just to stir up conflict. And there are moments that explore his character outside of Holly J, specifically when it comes to his relationship with Fiona, but there really isn't a lot of that for me to feel invested or connected to his character. Since he and Fiona were pretty close to the point of being unhealthy, there are moments where I feel like we should have at least heard from Declan, or he should have been mentioned, like maybe when Fiona was struggling with alcohol, or when Fiona got attacked, or even her graduation from Degrassi. I'm just saying that I could see Declan have a sort of redemption arc, growing into a more sympathetic character, but he left too soon, really. The only reason I question really where he went is because of how close he was to Fiona. I've already said how I'm actually pretty fond of Alex as a character, and I really don't think the show saw the potential she had. One thing that always bothered me was the way she was written off.
My mom has a cousin in Ajax. I'll find a job. I got options.
We saw Alex's journey going from being someone who didn't really believe in herself to someone who worked hard toward making her life better while still struggling with her mother, who was in an abusive relationship, and also not being privileged like those around her. I just found her character endearing at times, trying to make her life better and seeing her progress as a character, and I'm not sure if the writers had the intention at the beginning of developing her as far as they did. After making money through stripping just to keep a roof over her head, Alex's mother ends up bailing her boyfriend out, leaving Alex with only Paige to depend on. And when it seemed like their relationship progressed, the beginning of season 7 finds their relationship falling apart, and they eventually break up because of this. We never hear from Alex again. We never find out if she got her life back on track. What happened to Alex and her relationship with her mother? Did it ever get better? Did her mother leave Chad? There's so much potential that I see with Alex's character, and for the show to do this, to demote her character to recurring in season 7, when there was still so much room to grow, and at least not even give her a better send-off, it just always upset me. Well, that's all I could think of. If there's anything else that I missed, I'd love to hear it in the comments. If you made it to this part of the video, thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next one.